Morning Twin Flame Tribe, this is Ron Conradi. I'm bringing you another video today. Today I'm going to talk about ego versus soul in the Twin Flame journey. As you know, Twin Flames are the reincarnation of one soul into two different bodies with opposite polarities, a divine feminine and a divine masculine polarity. This has absolutely nothing to do with gender. I mean, twin flames can be the same gender. It's not necessarily a romantic type connection. It could be a mentor-mentee, it could be a parent-child, it could be a multitude of different relationships in which a twin flame connection manifests. It is important to know that it is one soul that is incarnated into two bodies. That does not mean that each body gets half a soul. The full soul is incarnated into two bodies. The different bodies are different polarities. So even though the twins are very much the same in their outlook on life, in their approach to things and so forth, they can also be very different, and this is by design. It is done that way so that the twins can actually trigger each other, shine a big old spotlight onto the different pains, abuses, traumas of the past, so that it can trigger this, what we call the dark night of the soul, so that the twin can then start to ascend. What does ascension mean? Ascension is the process of waking up. It is the process of realization, the realization that we live in the illusion of self called Maya, that we are not in fact our egos, but are in fact our souls, which are immortal and of God. And that is very important. So basically, as we live in the sandbox through many lifetimes, through many incarnations, we live in the construct of the ego. Our being is made up of a threefold construct, namely the mind or the ego, the body, and then the soul. The soul hangs back throughout many lifetimes. It gives the ego the ability to then try and figure out life for itself. The ego usually makes a big mess of it, and we end up in a situation where we become actually the worst versions of ourselves. We become prone to addiction, we become prone to negative and bad behavior, mistreating others. We live in the illusion that we are individuals, that we are basically isolated from everyone and everybody around us. This brings great unhappiness. We latch onto the abuse that we've suffered in the past through, whether it may be emotional or physical or sexual, any other type of abuse. Very often twins have the same kinds of abuse that they dealt with throughout their childhoods. It's also important to note that twins are very often very different. The one might be much older than the other, different ethnicities scattered across the world, but somehow when the time is ready and ripe, the soul brings the two 3D beings together, and they are together for a short while in which they trigger each other, in which they then trigger the ascension process. Very often it becomes too much for them and one twin runs away. It then leaves the remaining twin, or the divine feminine twin, or positive polarity twin, to lead the ascension journey, to then wake up through this horrible process of the dark night of the soul, where you're actually then forced to confront all your past traumas, all the pains, and each of these past traumas and pains are usually manifested in something that happened between you and your twin. It's reflected, represented in the trauma that you experience when your twin runs away or when you trigger each other. And basically then, as you work through this absolute abandonment of yourself, actually you realize that you're not your ego but your soul. And this is a 10,000 old year teaching. It's the same in many, many different religions and so forth. And it is called samadhi. So as you go through this awakening process, it is then a process where the ego diminishes, the ego actually dies, and the soul starts shining through. Now there's a very good analogy. If you think of the mind, the body and the soul, of which we are made up of. If you think of a motor vehicle as your body, and you think of your ego as a little baby that's sitting in the car seat in the back, and your soul as the driver of the motor vehicle, it then becomes a question where you as your ego, thinking that you are your ego, turns a little play steering wheel in the back seat to the left and the right. And as long as the soul, or the daddy or mommy, turns the car to the left or right, then the ego is happy because it thinks it's in charge. But actually it's not. And the moment that the soul turns the motor vehicle to the left, but the ego, the little baby, turns the steering wheel to the right and the car doesn't go that way, the ego throws a tantrum and is then very, very unhappy because it loses the perception of control, which it never had in the first place. So the essential takeaway, going through the dark night of the soul, me being a twin myself, having undergone that process, it's very, very difficult. Guys, I can't even begin to tell you the hardships you go through. And those of you that are currently in the dark night of the soul would know all about it. I mean, you can't stop crying, you absolutely pine for your twin, you obsess about getting your twin back, and you feel that your life can't continue. And it's essentially that way because you felt that you've lost yourself, which you have in fact, because remember, you and your twin are one soul, different polarities. But when your twin abandons you, you actually feel like you've abandoned yourself. And it is to overcome this process and let your soul shine through, because the soul is also something that is not dualistic. It is singular in nature. It is of God. Our minds or egos can only understand things in context of opposites. It understands up because it understands down. It understands here because it understands there, and so forth. The soul is very different. The soul does not have any opposites. It is unconditional love, for which there is no opposite, because it is just love. That is what the soul is made up of. That is what the divine is made up of. The soul only experiences infinite joy, not happiness, but joy, for which there is no opposite. It is just joy. The soul, because it has no time, it does not understand or does not prescribe to the man-made or ego-made construct of time. It just is. And that is how we should become through the dark night of the soul. You should be. We are human beings. We are not human doings. And it is in the realization that by letting go and by surrendering, that we can find this peace and joy and love of our soul, that we are in fact in our twin flames. Because remember that we are actually divine. We are infinite. We keep on going forever and ever, and we assimilate back into the divine construct after we've undergone all these different iterations of life here on earth. And that's very important to understand. So the whole concept of your ego journey is to let go of the ego, to surrender, to understand that there is no control, to understand that we actually are our souls, and that we can only be as souls. Not to latch on to anything in your past. It does not define you. That is your ego's way of trying to keep you buried in the pains of the past, in the trauma of the past. It is time to let go of all of that, to embrace your soul and just to be. Once you do this, you find that you actually have more than enough time to do any and everything in your life, that you find peace and joy in every moment, because that is the only moment that is. The soul knows that the whole journey unfolds in this very moment that we are in right now, and nowhere else, not in the past, not in the future, It is only in the now. And that is the play-off between the soul and the ego. The soul wants nothing. The soul already has everything because it is part of the all. And this is very important to understand. The soul is part of the all. Everything is already part of the soul. You are not an isolated individual. You are part of a whole construct of the universe, of everything around you. And this is the new way of thinking. It is the new way of being. The consciousness awakening is in the realization that you are everything, that you are not isolated. That is your ego. And so whenever you hear the words I want, or I need to, or this year I'm going to, that's all ego. The soul will never do things like that. The soul is content in being. The soul is content in living life from the moment to the next moment to the next moment, and so forth. And it's very important to embrace that, because through that we gather and we acquire abundance, because we are already everything. It is through that your life's realization and purpose will come to the forefront, and by being and by embracing that purpose, you will go through life in joy and peace and love. And that is my message to you today. So let go of your ego. You're not defined by your past. You're not defined by your traumas. You're not defined by the twin that came into your life that maybe left your life. You are none of those things. You are your soul. You and your twin are one soul. Therefore, you are always together. It is not a connection. You are, in fact, the same being. And it is in that realization of joy and peace that you can actually live life. Guys, head on over to twinflamessionsa.wordpress.com. There's a lot more information there. Subscribe to my channel, like the video. I wrote a book on Amazon that you can read up on Twin Flames if you want to acquire more information. There's a full 6-hour video course on the website that delves into all these different aspects and how you can actually get your sovereignty back as a human being, how you can find and live within your soul construct and get rid of all the pain and suffering of the past which you're not defined by. That is an ego construct. That is something that you need to let go of through the dark night of the soul journey. You can be stuck there for many years if you don't awaken, if you don't let go of the past. So I wish you guys a wonderful day, a wonderful 2022. This will probably be my last video for 2021, and I wish you all love and light. Keep well. Bye.